Hello everyone, it's me Josephine Sneha. Hope you're all doing well. In this video, I'm going to be talking about a topic from social history of England called as development of education in the Victorian age. So to begin with, let me start with the story of Queen Victoria because it's interesting, of course. To be precise, on June 20, 1837, Queen Victoria was happily sleeping in Kensington Palace. So at the time she was 18 years old, so it's kind of looked like the introduction of a Disney princess, of course. So she was happily sleeping, and when she woke up in this Kensington Palace, she was actually informed by the Archbishop of Canterbury that she was about to be crowned as the Queen of England. That was like very surprising, and she actually understood that she has to hold a responsible position from that time onwards, that is from the age of 18 onwards. And after that, there were lots of stuff happening because she was in the power for almost 64 years, of course. So there were long important history, and there were so many important events taking place in England at the time. There was telegraph, telephone, a lot of things invented. Science and technology gained a different dimension at that time. People saw her growing, and people also grew along with her. So from the tender age, which is why she is affectionately addressed as grandmama, and millions of people they get enthusiastic when they talk about her. After Queen Elizabeth, she's the most famous queen, of course. And not just that, since she ruled a long period of time, many people admire her as one of the most prominent rulers in the British history. Her great rule is actually contributed because of her intelligence, but at the same time she was counseled well by her husband, Prince Albert. Of course, he is considered to be very handsome. You can check in Google, of course. And apart from that, after him, there were prime ministers Peel, Gladstone, Disraeli, and so on. So it's evident that they brought numerous changes in England's history, which is why they together made a great team. And when she reached the age of 83, she died, and she was mourned universally, of course. So it is evident that her great deeds and all the contributions she brought in England were adored at the time, and not only at the time but even later, of course. So this is all the short history about Queen Victoria. Now let's get into the education at that time. To begin with, there were three different schools in the initial stage. One is the public school, and then the school run by the Church of England, and third one is the private school. So the public school were attended by the upper class and the middle class, where they had to pay expensive fee, whereas the schools run by the Church of England, the fee was of course low. In addition to these schools conducted by the church, there were private schools which were attended by almost all the classes. So this was the condition in the initial stage. Later, the Catholics or the Roman Catholics, they were shut out of the school due to some law or custom, which is why they had to run their own school. Apart from that, there were even schools in the villages, but we could see that their standard were less compared to the schools run in the cities. Overall, the primary education were neglected. People who had the money, who could afford, they actually went to school, whereas the other people, they went to work instead. So overall, the primary education was really low compared to what they saw at the end of the 19th century. Moving on to the secondary education, as stated earlier, when primary education itself is neglected, you can imagine the condition happening in the secondary education. Only the rich people, they actually moved on to secondary education, whereas the others, they moved towards employment. So there were schools run by kings and the major people there, and it was attended only by the rich people who were able to pay expensive fees. But this scenario kind of changed, and it completely changed when Dr. Arnold started a school, of course, or when he became the headmaster of the school. Do you remember who Dr. Arnold is? Well, he's the principal or the headmaster, and also the father of the poet Matthew Arnold. Well, he has actually written a work on his father, of course, so you can even read it. It's very interesting. So the things that he brought into the education field is noteworthy. So this Dr. Arnold, he was the headmaster of Rugby School, and he was there for almost 14 years, from 1828 to 1848. And at that time, he made rigorous changes. He wanted them to read religious stuffs, and he believed that this will instill some kind of discipline in them. He focused more on bringing discipline to these boys, of course. He believed in the overall education, not just the bookish things, but also that they have to be well disciplined, well mannered, and they should come out in a vibrant way. And one good thing he did was he introduced games as a part of the curriculum. Of course, the critics were a bit skeptical towards it because they said that these the boys or the students there, they were kind of toiling at the games and playing their studies, because at that time it was not accepted or agreed. But then it brought certain changes. He wanted the boys to relax, and also it kind of gave discipline when they were into sports or games. So it was brought forth. And then after seeing these improvements in these boys or those in the rugby school, even the public schools, private schools, and even the schools run by the government, they started adopting the same technique. So this is like very important thing brought forth by Dr. Arnold. Now the government started thinking about bringing an uniform primary education system in England, because primary education was neglected. Only people with money, they moved towards education. So now they started focusing on it, and this was brought forth in the Second Reformation Act. Remember the Second Reformation Act? Yes. So they actually tried to bring forth certain changes and developments. Remember, the second reform bills actually gave rise to the right to vote. Then still people, due to the lack of education, they did not know what is good, what is bad. So now like the government had to like implement basic primary education for most of the people. So they started doing it. As a result, we have Gladstone's Education Act in 1870s. So almost most of these acts that came out in 1870s, 1871, it brought forth certain changes, of course, and we could see the drastic improvement that was happening in education at that time. Based on this act, like school boards were set up and they had to monitor certain things. Of course, they did not make education to be free. They had to pay some kind of amount, probably 1/3 or something like that, not the full fee but 1/3 of it. So this made even the people from the lower class or the ones who were like working, they started like bringing their children to the school instead of sending them to work in the industries or factories. Even revolutionary stuffs were happening in terms of university education. At the time only two universities existed, Oxford and Cambridge. Even there they had to write an entrance exam, which was like more of a religious text. So this made sure only people who were very religious, they only were able to clear the test and enter university. So now this was abolished. Prominence was given to scholarship, literacy, and not only to the religious stuff. People of any religion, they can actually, like if they have the proper knowledge, they can actually crack the exam and enter the university. And slowly they started setting up other universities instead of people depending only on these two universities. Then came University of London, Manchester, Liverpool, and so on. Moving on to women's education. So for the first time in 1848, a college for women called as Queen's College, it was set up, followed by Bedford College. And slowly even the colleges or the universities in Oxford and Cambridge, they started giving admission to girls or women at that time. Newly formed universities started enrolling both women and men in their colleges, what we call it as co-education. So it stated that the University of London started giving its degree for the first time in 1878 or 79 to women at that time. Moving on to the conclusion. So it's evident that 1870s brought drastic changes in education. So what we call it as boards were set up, a commissioner was appointed to look at the welfare of the people, like women education was focused on. So a lot of things were taking place at that time, and this shows that the importance of education. Only after the education being given to all, people started improving themselves. They became very civilized, and it also gave rise to more inventions in the field of science and technology. Remember like how only the public schools were like very expensive, they collected more fee, it was expensive, so they provided a standardized level of education. But then like the private colleges and the government schools, they had to also up their game so that they give standard coaching or standard education to all the people, not just the public schools but both the private and the government. Even the schools in villages, they had to like step up so that like people in England received all kinds of holistic education. This is indeed a great step taken by England to form a universal national system of education. So that is all about this in this video. So we'll see you in some other time. Until that, stay safe and make healthy choices. Bye.